blessing of the Lord, I met this wonderful group that came through here, doing hard labor, helping me in preparation with my house, smiling, jolly people, happy, God-gifted people.
In its 60 years, Mennonite Disaster Service has responded to individuals, families, and communities affected by disaster, primarily in Canada and the United States. MDS's focus on helping the most vulnerable among us has stretched from Barrier, British Columbia, to Heston, Kansas, and the U.S. Gulf Coast.
I had a real heart for New Orleans and for the people who lived here.
Everybody I met was just wonderful. I can't say enough about this organization, this group that I ate with and I prayed with.
Working with the MDS is very encouraging because there's not a single person who doesn't want you here. Everyone is excited to see you and is thrilled that you are here for a week or 2 weeks or however long you're here, and whatever you can to offer, the results of which are immediately tangible.
I never knew anything about this until Katrina, that they had people that come in your town and do the things that this organization did. I could never forget them. I could never thank them enough. They're just beautiful. It's a blessing. The Mennonite people are a blessing.
In 1950, following significant response efforts to tornadoes in Oklahoma and flooding in Manitoba, Mennonites began to further organize their practice of mutual aid. Through a series of picnics in the park, 2 Sunday school class groups in Kansas gathered to share ideas and food, expressing a common desire to seek opportunities to be engaged in peaceful, helpful activity, just where we find ourselves. Mennonite Service Organization was born.
We decided that since we're right on the edge of Tornado Alley, and there's oftentimes windstorms or there'd be floods, that we should organize emergency groups and be prepared on a moment's notice to go out and try to give relief and aid where it was needed. But after about a year or two, and seeing the success that they were having, they did give it the official blessings of the conference. That's when it became officially known as Mennonite Disaster Service.
When disaster strikes, you can count on an MDS volunteer wanting to respond.
Excitement of going out, you know, especially if you go to farther afield.
12 hours on the road. They get there the next morning, the adrenaline's pumped, and they want to go to work, and they want to get as much work done as they can. I mean, that's Mennonite 101, work hard.
What else is there in an emergency?
Mennonites have a long history of compassionate action. For generations prior to 1950, mutual aid was an informal practice performed by Mennonites and other Anabaptist groups who felt that their faith was best expressed in the day-to-day actions of caring for one another. Barn raisings and other spontaneous gestures of assistance were carried out when fellow church members or neighbors faced fire, tornado, or flood. During World War II, as an alternative to military service, Mennonites and Amish chose civilian public service. They were required to perform work approved to be in the national interest, including service in agriculture and mental health hospitals. Duties also extended to the Forest Service, fire prevention, and response to disasters that struck nearby.
Well, my very first experience was of the Red River flooding in 1948. I came from Altona at that time, and I went to Rosenort to help sandbagging. That was Mennonitisches Hilfswerk, the Mennonite service.
MDS became a binational inter-Mennonite organization in 1955, with its first annual meeting in Chicago on March 26, 1956. In 1962, MDS became a section of Mennonite Central Committee, MCC, with regions defined. Wayne Clemens was named the first part-time coordinator, followed by Delmar Stolley in 1964.
We always felt good that there was that organization across the border. There were 4 regions in the U.S., and we became the 5th region.
As chairman of Region 5, I spent a lot of time going back and forth to the different provinces, that each province had its MDS unit.
Though Canada may not experience as many disasters as the U.S., they are just as involved.
Canada has been very good in sending volunteers to the south, and some of the projects there were as many Canadian people working as Americans.
And I really appreciated the binational connection and cooperation.
In 1971, Nelson Hustetter became the first full-time MDS executive coordinator.
One of the important Anabaptist tenets of faith to me is the servanthood stance. And I saw MDS being the model for servanthood. So I tried to generate that at all levels, congregational level, conference level, and also the denominational level. During the time that I was in, we realized that there were a number of other agencies in disaster relief. And so we came to the point where we realized we had to specialize, because other agencies, so that we wouldn't compete with them, the government was providing some services, Red Cross was providing a good program, Salvation Army was providing a good program. So the committee and I, we tried to focus on disaster cleanup and disaster rebuilding.
Well, quite often a disaster occurs in an area where there may already be a Mennonite church functioning, so that is sort of our first point of contact.
Because they're the ones that know the area and they're able to take us around.
We obviously do an investigation of the area ourselves to try and get an appreciation for the different parts of each community that have been affected.
And checking out to see what the disaster looks like other than what CNN might give us.
Are there other organizations already there responding? Are there needs being met? And if not, then maybe that's something we can look into if they're ready for cleanup or if they're ready for the longer term for MDS to come in and build.
We have official partnerships with both Salvation Army and Red Cross. I know in the U.S. they work with FEMA.
We're part of the National VOAD, which is Volunteer Agencies Active in Disaster.
In Canada, when there's a disaster, we try to work as closely as possible with the Emergency Measures Organization, EMO.
So there are organizations in place in both countries to, on a national basis, on a state and provincial basis, and a local basis.
I was the executive coordinator from 71 to 86. And when I was 62, I decided, well, they need a younger person.
In 1986, Lowell Detweiler became the new MDS executive coordinator.
I've always felt like I'm kind of a people person, worked in human resources, and when I started as executive coordinator, I was working in the MCC offices as an MCCer doing the MDS position. So it was very much a part of daily activity and life in MCC, and so it was a natural step. One of the most meaningful for me was the 2+ years involvement in Florida and Louisiana after Hurricane Andrew, which happened in 1992.
We think of clients as somebody who has gone through that disaster, but in reality, we're helping the whole community.
That was always our aim, that we should always aim not only with hammer and nails. It needed more. It was a holistic kind of service that we could do. And there have been so many experiences where it went beyond that, where people were helped with what they had lost, but also emotionally to listen, to counsel, give help where it needn't necessarily only be building, but building up their lives as well.
The folks at the Homestead Mennonite Church, where we lived and worked for years, became personal friends that you stay in touch with to these days, even some of them. And so that's the people part of it. Plus then, of course, all the MDSers.